I'll get criticized quite often by other liberals and leftists who don't like it when I communicate with people who have, radically different views from me. But I can't help what I love, I suppose. So
Do you support the idea of being able to keep a majority culture?
I think that America has its own unique culture that has come about from, hundreds of years of different cultures coming here and mixing together. I think American culture is a new culture all on its own. And I think it's pretty special because of that.
Hey, Stardust.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Perfect. You fixed it. You fixed
Yeah,
it.
I did.
So
How
good
are
to
you
see you.
doing?
I'm doing well. I love watching you. I've seen you on various shows, and you're kind of fascinating. So I'm so happy we have you on.
Oh, really? Okay,
Thank you
that's
so
great.
much. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you located? You don't have to dox yourself,
Yeah,
but like, are you East Coast, West
East
Coast,
Coast. DC
East
area.
Coast?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
You like it there?
I do. Yeah, yeah. What about you? Where are you located?
I'm in Arkansas. I'm a hillbilly in Arkansas. So
Nice. That's nice. Arkansas's
Sasha
nice.
says I'm not. Yeah, it's pretty out here. So
Yeah.
I'm actually at Sasha, my fiance's apartment right now. Usually I'm in my home, but her
Mm.
dad's in the hospital, so we're going to visit him today. So that's why I'm
Okay.
here.
Sorry to hear that.
So
I hope
yeah,
he gets
that
better soon.
happens. So
Yeah.
what I'll do when I get started, it will just be informal and don't worry about it. I'm not a mean like a lot of the people interview. You're so mean.
Yeah, well,
And oh yeah, Sasha says she thought big tech was just so mean to you. So that
oh,
was
that's okay. I'm used
all
to it.
right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start live, and you gotta. I have to admit I'm kind of a boomerish with tech, and what we do we were streaming live both on YouTube and Rumble. We'll go here,
Okay.
and usually I get it set up okay every time I have a boomer moment.
Okay.
And hey guys, welcome to the Ramsey Paul show. It's January 19th, and we are excited to have a special guest, Stardust. And welcome, Stardust. How you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. You're like my first. I've had many guests on. I used to do a
Mhm.
show called Happy Homeland, so I had lots of guests.
Mhm.
But you're my first guest on my new show. I do every Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. to 1. I will keep you on like maybe an hour, but if you have to leave sooner,
Okay.
that's fine too. And
Sure.
if you guys don't know, Stardust, one thing that impressed me with her, and as Sasha was just saying off the air, that she would go onto these shows with like Ethan Ralph, Big Tech, and God, you would take abuse. How do you put up with that?
I mean, I
Most
think
because you're different. First of all,
yeah.
I commend you because most liberals are, you consider yourself liberal, right?
Yeah.
Or left
I
wing?
do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Most won't converse with people that they consider to be on the right. They consider, oh,
Mm.
we can't do that. That's wrong,
Mhm.
evil. And especially when you go on one of those shows and they're so mean to you. And why do you do that? And you must have thick skin. And so,
Yeah, anything that they say isn't anything I haven't heard before. And honestly, I love talking to people who have different viewpoints from me. There's nothing that really fascinates me more about it. I'll get criticized quite often by other liberals and leftists who don't like it when I communicate with people who have, radically different views from me. But I can't help what I love, I suppose. So, yeah,
right. That is so cool. And thank you for
yeah.
being here. And if you guys want to ask questions, do so. Just make them respectful because unlike the other shows, I won't take any really mean questions. I just won't read them. So thank you for being here. And I had started us on. I was like, well, what can we talk about? And I thought, well, an interesting topic because Stardust, you kind of it's kind of weird. You kind of hang around the American First Group and all that type of stuff. And I'm not saying you're part of it, obviously, but
Uh,
you're aware of it, right? You're aware of the
mhm.
scene
I'm
and
aware.
everything, the
Yeah.
personalities. And what do you make from this whole incel type of movement? Are they being ironic or do they mean it? Because part of the issue is they do a lot of things in irony. They say that women should just be in cages, and and they do it, and it gets a lot of people all triggered. But
Yeah.
they're just doing it to provoke people. How much do you think is real, and how much do you think is just for entertainment purposes?
So I think it depends on the person. I think people like big tech honestly do believe that women should not be in politics. I think people like Nick generally believes that women should not be in politics, but he's willing to work with women who are in politics if it will advance his goals, like he did with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Um, Unfortunately, Marjorie Taylor Greene then ended up turning on him. Um,
Right.
yeah, but I do think that there's a lot of people in that group who do legitimately believe that women shouldn't be in politics, despite they will use female politicians who are willing to work with them. So,
And if I can bring up your ethnicity, I don't care.
yeah,
But
of course.
are you Pakistani originally, or
Indian. Hmm. Hmm.
Indian? Oh, so you're
Hmm.
Hindu, right?
Well, my family's Muslim, but yeah, Indian.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I know we're so from north, would that be Northwest India region?
Yeah, northish. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
Okay, because I know
yeah.
they had a lot of ethnic conflict there over the centuries. You had the
Hmm.
Sikhs, I believe it was, and the
Hmm.
Hindus and the Muslims, and they all kind of
Hmm.
fought together, and then the
Yeah,
Afghanistan. So,
yeah.
from that culture, did you have to adjust from being, isn't that a pretty patriarchal culture? And how did that change
Yeah.
with America?
So, I was born and raised in America, but obviously, with there's always a subculture you can always find
Mhm.
when you grow up within a specific family. My mom's always been a feminist, so she tried to raise me with feminist ideals, but at the same time, she can't help that she obviously has still some very patriarchal values as well. And so she ingrained the high expectations that come with a patriarchal kind of viewpoint. There's a high expectation on women in those societies. So it's hard. It can be hard to balance. I do think that there are times where I see people run away with the feminist label and kind of like go a little crazy with it. And I think yeah, I don't really know. I guess there is some imbalance there, but I'm just I guess doing the best I can with it. So yeah.
Are you having, because a lot of feminists now, I think they call them TERFs, some of them,
Mm,
that they don't really like these transgender that say they're women, and there's sort of a battle there. I read a story, and I've talked to people, like, for
uh,
example, lesbian bars are almost gone now because it's just been flooded with these quote women that have a penis that want to have sex with a woman. And
uh,
so where do you fall on that equation?
that's a rough one, but I'm gonna say that I am skeptical of trans women competing in women's sports. I think that women's only spaces, it depends. I think some trans women, it's fine for them to be in those women's only spaces, but I think there needs to be right now we live in a society where they have to conform to essentially what being a woman looks like and acts like, right? And so if you're not doing that to people who typically would be in those spaces who aren't trans, um, that's going to be very threatening for them if they see somebody who's not presenting as a woman and acting as a woman entering their spaces. So yeah.
It's interesting because I'm a lot older than you, but when my day feminism, they made a big to do that you could be a woman and you didn't have to act necessarily feminine. You could be a tomboy, you could like male
Hmm.
interests, you didn't have to present as a woman. But we're almost going back now to this whole you have to present as a woman, and what does it mean to really be a woman? It's the thing I've said, like, could I say I'm a woman because I identify as such? And yeah, my hair's short and I'm tall and I look like a dude, but screw you, I say I'm a woman.
Hmm.
So it is sort of interesting how that it's like, oh, you're a girl that likes boy things. Maybe you're trapped in the wrong body. It's a real inversion from when I grew up, what feminism
Yeah.
was all about. And you just mentioned, oh, you need to present as a woman.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm not saying, you have to be particularly feminine for sure, but I do agree with your point that I don't think being a woman means that you have to be particularly feminine, but I think if you were presenting as a man with a full beard and walking into a women's only space, I would expect women to be very uncomfortable with that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, 'cause,
yeah,
most lesbians probably don't wanna, be banged with a woman that has a penis with and a beard. I don't know,
yeah.
I'm just
Mhm.
guessing, I don't know,
Yeah.
that's just kinda what
Yeah.
I'm
Or
thinking.
even like women's only hours at a gym, right? That could
Yes.
be even that alone. I grew up Muslims tend to have very like segregated male and female areas, and even at parties, men are on one side, women are on the other side. And even then, you're not supposed to show, you're not supposed to let men see certain parts of you in
Right.
that culture. And so I could definitely see, like, if somebody comes into a females only hours at a gym or a female only space at like a college, um, that some women might feel uncomfortable, feel exposed in that way. So,
Now, I know you said your family were Muslims, are you a
mhm.
Muslim too?
I personally don't really believe in anything like that. I'm, pretty a-religious, I suppose. So, yeah.
Do you see this as a trend that it happened with Christians where they were more fundamental, but then they get into the Western culture and they kind of lose it? Are you an example of that? Of where Muslims, if they immigrate into a Western culture, they start to drop a lot of their beliefs? Or do you think they will actually change the culture to be more like traditional and that sort of thing? I know recently
Mhm,
I've seen both.
mhm,
For example, there's a Syrian girl, if you know her, I've interviewed
mhm,
her. She's a Muslim, but she doesn't wear the hair gear or anything like
mhm,
that. She
mhm,
wears makeup, and so I've seen there's a lot of change there. But then you do have some that want to impose their view, and you have some conflict, like in Dearborn, Michigan, which is heavily
mhm,
Muslim now because of immigration. They really objected to all this LGBTQ education in the school, which started this politically correct dilemma. You have a
mhm.
progressive stack. Who's more important, the homosexuals or the Muslims? Are you going to be homophobic, or are you going to be Islamophobic? Do you see that as a change, though? Do most Muslims integrate and they start to lose their beliefs, or start to become lax, where the women start to become feminists? They wear makeup, they show more skin, or does it go the other way?
I think, I think honestly, it's more like I still feel like I've retained a lot of my culture despite not maybe believing in anything religiously. And so I think more often it's people come to America and kind of integrate really well. America's really good for that. America's one of the places where people integrate the quickest and most seamlessly, it seems, with the exception of these pockets that you're talking about. So I think it's more likely that people will tend to come to America, integrate really well, and lose like certain aspects of their culture. But I think that that's an okay trade-off um, for to be part of the American kind of identity, I suppose. So, yeah.
Now, getting back to what we wanted to talk about, what I wanted to talk about, and there's a lot of fascinating things like we can talk about, but I wanted to talk about the young men and stuff. Do you think these people, the young men, have a point? And what I'm talking about, there's a lot of resentment. Like there's the feeling like that you're young, you're pretty, so you can easily get an audience, but a man has a harder time. Women can always sell themselves on OnlyFans. They can just show their boobs and get a lot of money, and men have a lot rougher go of it. Is there any validity to that argument?
I think that there is some validity that um, we've done a lot of work for women's issues, and as a result, men probably feel like they've seen women's the places where women can thrive has expanded greatly, and they see that the places where men can thrive hasn't really expanded as much. So I definitely can see that, and men also are, more susceptible to suicide. They have a higher suicide rate. They're falling behind in education. So there are some serious things that men are disadvantaged in. But I don't think looking at OnlyFans is the right way to look at the way that women are benefiting. I don't think OnlyFans is a good I don't think it's a benefit to women. I think a lot of women who claim that they're empowered by it are kind of coping in a way. And while it's true that, like, for example, on online entertainment, that women will more easily get an audience, it's also true that there's a lower ceiling as well. So it's easier to get an audience, but it's harder to grow it, I think. So yeah,
Right, and then the women have to worry when they get older and they age out, do they still
hmm,
retain the audience if
yeah,
that's all they're bringing to the table is their looks? And that's interesting, but we brought up OnlyFans and prostitution,
hmm,
which I consider is a form of prostitution. Again, when I was young, feminism was thought that prostitution really exploited women, and now the new
hmm,
wave of feminism seems to think it's empowering to do that type of thing. The sex workers, they call it. They don't even call it
yeah.
prostitutes anymore, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very privileged, very small group of sex workers who are able to say that it's empowering. And the vast majority of sex workers globally are people who are forced or coerced into it. And if you look at the global stats, a lot of them enter the sex industry at like very young ages, like 13. So it may be the case that there are some women who are very privileged who feel empowered by that type of work, and they're able to do it with the safety of their own home, but most women in the globe are not benefiting in that sense.
And I even heard like the average OnlyFan girl just makes like $230 a month. I mean, you hear
Mhm.
about these like that girl that pretends she's 12, Bella or whatever, makes
Yeah,
millions a month. And so that's not typical necessarily. So I don't
yeah,
know if everyone can make a lot on that. But
yeah.
yeah. And then how do you, in the dating realm, men complain that women are hypergamous, which probably has some truth. They
Mm,
only want to date the top men, and if you don't have sexual restrictions, you get a de facto harem start to form, which is not good for society. Meaning the top guys have multiple girlfriends that they juggle, and the bottom guys have nothing. And that's where you
mm.
get the whole incel movement. What do you think about that argument?
So I won't disagree that women are hypergamous, but I will say, and there have been studies to show this, that men with a lot of sexual partners are viewed even more negatively by women than women are with a lot of sexual partners are viewed by men. And that's been something I've been saying for a while because a woman at the end of the day, when she's looking for a partner, she's looking for stability. A man who's had a lot of sexual partners, who has a history of making a habit and getting instant gratification, a lot of women are not going to be into that. They're going to want somebody who's stable, who is okay with not instant gratification.
Right. Unless the guy's
Mhm.
real rich or famous like DiCaprio, whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, then there's a select group of women who are looking for that, right? Who don't
Yeah.
mind that, but I think that I think a lot of average women, the average everyday woman, are looking for somebody who's stable.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up, what's your opinion on this whole Andrew Tate? He kind of came out of the, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the whole pickup artist scene and
Yeah.
the masculinity. Uh, the argument from the guys are, hey, it works. This is what women want. They want men to be kind
Hmm,
of the bad boys and be aggressive. Women may say they want a nice guy, but they
hmm,
don't have sex with nice guys. They respond to these type of guys like Andrew Tate.
hmm.
How do you respond to that?
I think Andrew Tate and people like Andrew Tate are successful in getting women because they're manipulative, and I don't think that's a good thing. One thing that really appalled me about the whole Andrew Tate phenomenon was watching the male Muslim community actually accept him with open arms when he's somebody who's partaken in sex trafficking. He has
Mhm.
a history of partaking in sex trafficking, of being manipulative. He says, if you just look at the things that Andrew Tate has said on camera by himself without any other material, he's admitted to so many different crimes, so many different ways. He talks about how you have a bottom, excuse my language, bitch, and that's
Mhm.
essentially pimp language. So
Right.
yeah, he's essentially using pimp vocabulary. He's talking about sex trafficking, and he's getting welcomed into the Muslim community with open arms. And very understandably, females in that community are very upset that the Muslim community is taking him in. Somebody who disrespects women, and somebody uh, who has no who views them like property essentially. So
Yeah. So yeah, that is sort of interesting because it seems like because I've been observing the online scene forever. It
mhm,
seems like, and it seems like 2008, 9, 10, there was this whole pickup artist community, and
mhm,
now you never heard of incel. And I think some of these guys use the term wrong because they're
mhm,
not involuntary celibate. They choose to be celibate.
mhm,
And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with being celibate, but they're acting like, well, it's involuntarily and they have a right to sex. And um, what do you, how do you approach those guys with sympathy, or do you kind of like they're
I try to
horrible?
approach them with sympathy, a little bit of both, a little bit of tough love and a little bit of sympathy. Like it is true that dating sites are harder for men. There are like way more men on these dating sites than there are women. It's like 70% men and 30% women. The odds there are just not good. And that's why I advocate for men to join social clubs and join join things outside of online dating sites
That
to
that
meet
that that
people.
reminds me years ago, to your
Yeah.
odds quote, this one girl I knew, she said, "Yeah, if you go back in the day, there's a lot more men in Alaska than women." And she
Mhm.
said, "Yeah, the odds are good up there, but the goods are odd." So that's
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
kind of true. Why do you think that is? That is it more men are more likely to use those and women are a little bit more reticent to put themselves out there on a dating site? Or is that women are more picky than men? And where men, because of our different sexual natures, we're willing to our standards tend to be lower.
I think I do have to say, I think men's standards are quite a bit lower than women's are, just based off of that one cop story. I don't know if you heard about the cop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she
I
wasn't
could,
a beauty by any means, but
yeah. I don't, yeah. So that story in itself, and some of those men were married too. That story in itself kind of makes me think like, maybe men have lower standards than I gave them credit for.
yeah.
um, but I think it's true on dating sites as well. There's like the meme about men will always swipe right and women will always swipe left, right? And so and swiping right is you like that person, and if you're swiping right on everybody, that it's obviously you're not being very selective. But also I think dating sites, this might just be me, but anytime I've used a dating site, I've been completely overwhelmed by it. um as soon as you make a profile, you get all sorts of people who are interested in you. Then you have to sift through a ton of messages, and a lot of them are identical to each other. A lot of them are just hello, or some of them are, like, hey, how are you? And not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's like 30 of them. And then you have to sift through them and you look through people's profiles, and it can just be pretty exhausting, I think, because you're trying to find a good person out of this sea of people. So I
Yeah,
think
now
that can
see,
be,
the
yeah,
average man wouldn't think that'd be his fantasy, is getting on a dating site and have to be exhausted by all the
yeah,
possibilities to go through. So,
yeah,
uh,
that's
I,
true.
I
Sure.
I guess that's.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a K-Max, and K-Max had a question. Stardust, you had an interview with Ethan Ralph. Do you feel his feuds are partly scripted for the show? Does the online left do this to start feuds to generate show interest? And in case you guys don't know, Ethan Ralph is pretty famous for, I don't even know his political positions because they're not really relevant. He gets
Mhm,
in all these online fights and he has this personal life out there. And he got in a fight with Chrissy Mayer on her show. And
mhm.
is this all legitimate, or is it because feuds and beefs make good online content and you get people donating?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think it is legitimate beefs, but I think at the back of our heads, we all know that, some of these will generate attention. And I think the people who succeed the most in these spaces are people who can um, get into these conflicts and not take anything too personally. And that's why I've kind of always been, on the side of like, okay, I'm not going to take anything that anybody says about me too personally, because this is just what they're doing online to generate content. But most people don't have that mindset. Most people do take things very personally. And even there are times where I take things personally too. So, Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the thing. Even Laura Loomer's the other woman like you. She can be, and she just puts up a lot of crap because she's Jewish.
Hmm.
And it was so funny. She was on one of those shows with Ethan Ralph and Baked Alaska, and they were all yelling at each other, accusing each other. And Alex Stein, they're Baked Alaska and Alex Stein were accusing each other of being a Jew. Meanwhile, Laura Loomer's right there in the middle of irony there,
Yeah.
and there part of this is, like the whole Nick Fuentes America First, no women ever, no women, but then they have women that they work with, and it
Hmm.
seems like a lot of contradictions in that whole type of
Yeah.
movement. Don't you see that a little bit?
I think so. And I think, I was in a debate with Fuentes and a few other people once, and I told them, this idea that women weren't ever involved in the workplace or weren't ever involved in politics is a complete myth. Even if you look at like the Western world in the 1800s, women did work. They just worked in
Yes.
different areas from men. Yeah, and women did participate in politics, and oftentimes were more ruthless than even men were. So, so yeah, I try to bring that up to them. I think they're looking for an idealized kind of a world that never really existed. So
Yeah, and another topic when it comes to what we're having, what's the problem with the birth rates? What's causing it? And if you guys don't know, there's always these stories. And first of all, is it a problem? Because I'm a little different than a lot of people on
mm,
the right. I don't necessarily think we need to continually grow huge. You're
mm.
from India. How many more people do we need in the world? But U.S.
Yeah.
births continue to decline as nearly half of women under 45 are childless. And one interesting statistic I saw, what's mostly correlates with a low birth rate? Surprisingly, this is counterintuitive, but it's prosperity. When people
Hmm.
get more prosperous, they have fewer children. You think it'd be the opposite. People that don't have much money, they just pump out the kids. And
Yeah.
as a society becomes more prosperous, like Japan or even China, they're not even
Hmm.
producing. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what fertility in India is. That used to be a huge problem, but I wouldn't doubt that as it gets more prosperous, fertility will drop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's generally the trend, that as countries get more prosperous, fertility does drop. India currently well, India used to have a problem, and it's just come to a solution now. But they used to have a problem where there was a huge gender disparity between men and women, because a lot of the time female babies would get aborted or would get killed essentially. So that was a problem for a really
Right.
long
China
time.
China had
Yeah,
that problem with the one birth policy. They would just kill the baby girls, and
yeah,
so that created a huge issue.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So
is the fertility about evened off in India, or are they still having too many
The,
kids?
they're still having a lot of kids. I think they've evened out as far as the gender disparity, which was probably the biggest issue. But I do think that dropping population can be a problem for the U.S. because we need these additional workers, just to fund like social security and things like that, right? And we want people to replace people when it comes to jobs. When people retire, we want other people to be there to replace them. So I think it is important to make sure that we have enough of a population to inherit and continue carrying the torch for uh, our country and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was young, the big issue was the population explosion, and we needed to
Mm.
reduce the world's population. And did you get my food, by the way? When I was a kid, my mother said, "Eat your food because they're starving in India."
Yes,
So
yes. I had my mom would say the same thing to me. She would say, "There are people starving in India. You better be eating all of your food." So,
yeah, you had to eat your whole plate. Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know if they ever got the food, but yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is first of all, I don't know if it's really a huge problem. In Japan, it's reducing,
Uh,
and the issue used to be there's too many people, and now they're saying, "Oh, we got the," because it's kind of a Ponzi scheme. I think how we
mm,
fund all these things, but then you're going to have an issue, and I don't think Andrew Yang was totally wrong with technology, how it's going to replace a lot of jobs. So
mm,
I think there's going to be a fundamental different way where how we're going to have to look at labor and how people support themselves. Do we have a universal basic income?
mhm,
Stuff like that. I don't know if that's a left or right wing position, but I think that
mm,
will be required to look at. Do
yeah.
you think that's going to be an issue? And do you think part of the reason fertility is dropping is because women are independent now and they don't need men?
Hmm. So if it's true that we have technology that is going to take a lot of jobs, that might actually be really good. I just would need to look more into it. But then yeah, I could see how maybe a dropping population might not be as much of an issue. As far as whether we're having less children because women are more independent, that could partly be it. I know that there have been essays written by women about whether like marriage is worth it anymore and things like that. But um, I think a lot of it also just has to do when you're more prosperous, there are more options available to you for birth control. There are more options available to you for just preventing pregnancy, things like that. And when you're in more dire economic situations, people generally are not educated on how to prevent getting pregnant, things like that. So it's probably a little bit of both. So,
Right.
yeah.
Did you ever see the movie Idiocracy?
Idiocracy. Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah,
That's a really good movie.
I think is there a danger of the wrong people having too many kids, meaning stupid people? Because at the beginning of
Mm,
the show, if you guys haven't seen it, it's a comedy. I highly recommend it. You have like this guy in a trailer park. It's not racial. He's a white
mm,
guy, Cleburne, and it's sort of there's no time preference, right? You
mm,
just have kids. You don't really think about tomorrow, and those are the people that are having tons of kids. Meanwhile, the people that are very intelligent, like guy's a doctor and a
mm.
stockbroker, and they're putting off having a child because the portfolio's not right, they're basically going extinct. Are we reproducing this most stupid of us in the world?
I want to say that despite despite the intelligence of the parents, I think I would like to believe that children have the potential to be to grow and be more intelligent than their parents, and achieve more than their parents. And so I think that I don't know that I would compare it to Idiocracy. I think that I hope that there are going to be more opportunities for wealth and for prosperity and for education for the incoming children.
Right, but IQ partially anyways inherited, just like any
Sure.
other part of
Mhm.
our body, and so if you have dumb people it's like, I was interested in dog breeding. If you have dumb dogs breed, you're gonna have a dumb dog, and that's just the way it goes,
But
and
with the right environment, with the right education, with the right environment, you can probably at least influence that somewhat, right?
well, you can raise a person to their potential. It's like I could never be a 100-meter Olympic champion because of
Mm,
genetics. Now, if I trained hard when I was younger, I could do a little bit better, but I'm still not going to get to that
mhm.
level. And I think that's the problem with IQ is yeah, with better education, you can get someone up to their ceiling maybe, but the ceiling is still pretty low, and that is a problem in order to have an advanced society is how do you continue with advanced society with a lot of stupid people.
Well, if you continue to push people to their ceiling and they have children that they push to their ceiling, I think, that as long as so when people as long as people have an average IQ, generally they can function in society. If they have above average IQs, obviously they're more likely to be successful and live a fulfilling life, a successful life. It's only when people have a below average IQ that their quality of life actually starts to really decline. So if their IQ is too low that they are having trouble like getting ready in the morning, things like that, then that's where we're concerned. And I think that I think that there are plenty of like average intelligence people who continue to make lots of children, who just happen to live in uh, um, worse economic situations, and also we've got the Flynn effect as well. So
Yeah, why don't you say some of this? There's it's kind of correlated because people that have a high time preference, meaning they like to focus on the immediate time, they don't think about the future, they're more likely to have, let's say, unprotected sex because
mhm.
9 months in the future is an abstraction that they can't really understand. Whereas one of the curses of being a little bit more intelligent, we tend, or people that are not, no, I'm not saying we, I'm not saying I'm that intelligent, but people that are intelligent, they tend to have a lot of anxiety about the future. Like, oh, do I have enough money to retire? If I have a child, how am I going to pay for the child? How am I going to afford college? Whereas someone that's kind of stupid and a high time preference is like, yeah, fuck it, I'm just having sex with this bitch, and then
Mhm.
with no birth control. Isn't that an issue too?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are like instant gratification, and I think we can train that out of people. But with TikTok and things like that, a lot of people are being instantly gratified. And I think advertising even has kind of caught on to how much people really like instant gratification. Yeah.
Yeah, that really is, and I never got watch TikTok very much, but, TikTok is now it has exceeded YouTube in video
Mm,
time,
mhm,
and young people love TikTok.
mhm,
I don't know if you do, but people that I've known in my life that are, let's say, girls in their 20s, they said that it's almost like
mm.
TikTok, the algorithm can read your
Yeah,
mind. It just keep this like
yeah.
crack. Do you do TikTok or follow it
I
or
try not to watch too much of it because I'm scared of it getting I'm scared of getting too into it. But I will say also I forgot to mention that I think teen pregnancies have actually reduced now. They're like at an all-time low. So despite what you're saying, like lower intelligence people or people with less impulse control having more children, we're at least seeing the reduction in teen pregnancy, which I think is super important. So
Yeah, that was a big issue. And part of that
yeah.
is, and this is surprising because even though we're more permissive now and as a culture,
Mhm.
teens, I think, are having a lot less sex than they did in the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
And what do you think the reason for that is? And does this correspond to another crisis that's happening? And I think my son, by the way, is a biologist, and he says this is happening with other mammals. Is the reduction in sperm count for males, not just in humans?
Mhm.
Do you think that is a potential issue? So I guess there's a couple of questions there.
Yeah.
Why are people having less sex? Are they this could open a lot
Mhm.
of conversation. Are men turning to porn? Is that the reason? Or
Mm.
women, they just like to virtue signal on, they get their fix by doing TikTok videos and not actually having sex or having relationships? Or is it biological? Men are becoming, their sperm count is reducing, and what could be the reason for that? What's your whole thought about the
Mm.
whole people aren't having sex as much?
So I can't say much about sperm count and how that would influence somebody's behavior, but I can say that children today are much more protected than they used to be in the past. And I think as a result of that, um, if your parents are hovering around you, if you've got family around you all the time who are protecting you, it's going to be much harder for you to have these opportunities to have sex. And so that may not necessarily be a bad thing, especially when we talk about wanting people to make smarter decisions with who they have sex with and when they have sex. But I could see how some people might see that as a potential way that it's causing a larger problem. So,
Yeah, I guess back in the day, even though parents, I mean, the people were more religious, but where there's a
mm,
will, there's a way. You can
yeah,
always find a place, you know.
yeah.
So, what's your opinion on porn? Harmful?
Porn is very complicated for me. I think in the right circumstances, it has the potential to not be harmful. I think it has the potential to be a neutral, but as it is right now, the industry is harmful, and I think there are a lot of women who are in the industry and men in the industry who get taken advantage of and get things sprung on them last minute. And there's this really good video by this porn actress who talks about how she's in tears basically, and she talks about shoot she was doing where she was forced to do something that she didn't want to do, and she was afraid of not doing it because you can get blacklisted essentially from future things. So
Right, and I think it's got a lot more extreme. When I was a kid, it was like Playboy. It was just
mm,
nude women you could see, or like me, you just have to go to the
yeah,
Sears catalog. That's like
yeah.
that. Now it's pretty graphic and it gets more, it escalates more. Do you think that that could be part of the reason that a lot of guys have just checked out of women and are just interested in virtual stuff? And, that brings up, the whole virtual reality and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Could that have an impact on the nature of humans because men get their release otherwise?
I think it could partly be that. I don't know about all. I do know that like the earlier you're exposed to porn, like the more extreme your tastes tend to be. But and that probably is, partly an issue. Becoming desensitized to more and more
Yes.
extreme things. But also I think you see a lot of women actually who are not going out and seeking relationships. And I'm not really sure why. But they talk about how men are having less sex. Then there is a statistic that is just a few years behind, but shows that women are having less sex as well, and almost at the same rates that men are. So, uh, or I think actually, I think they're both part of the same study, if I recall correctly. But
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and I
Mhm,
think years ago, at least when we were a
mhm,
Christian society, sex was supposed to be in the marriage, and it was primarily for families to have, get pregnant.
mhm.
I assume a Muslim societies is the same way.
It's similar,
And
yeah,
we
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm,
now we've turned it more into an entertainment thing, and I think that's kind of reduced it a little bit, and people get jaded with it. So maybe that's part of the thing that is happening. Oh, and K-Max, the other part of his question I didn't answer because I don't know. I don't really follow
yeah.
much online, to be honest, even though I am online. Do they have left-wing feuds like the right wing does? Does that go
They
on?
do, but they're not as exciting, I feel. They're not as interesting and exciting. Um, yes, there's and I try to cover it because I like to cover some of that infighting that happens,
Yeah.
but it hasn't reached the same level as I've seen on the right. Though it is getting there, I think. It's slowly getting there. So,
Yeah, I was disappointed. I saw that Ethan Ralph was you had him on, and I'm like, I think a lot of people tuned in because 'cause they're like, "Oh,
yeah.
we're just waiting for him to blow up on you." But he didn't. He was very nice to you,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that was surprising. And, K-Max, can a compromise between the left and the right, does there seem to be a horseshoe theory, a populist issue between Bernie supporters and Trump supporters? What would help this? I don't know if you're familiar with the horseshoe theory. It's like when you get
Mhm.
radical right or radical left, they kind
Mhm.
of converge on some of the things they believe in. Do you believe that's true?
I do believe that's true. I do believe that there is some horseshoe theory at work for sure. I
And
don't know what else to say about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the compromise, K-Max, I would say it depends on what your position is. And one of the things I always try to emphasize, there's a lot of nuance, and I don't like black and white thinking and good guy, bad guy. And I think the people have different positions, and it's hard to say, like you remember the old right, alt right. This is what all the alt right stands for. Well, no, it's just a loose group of people. They had a lot of
Mhm.
different opinions,
Yeah.
and I was at the same. I think the same thing with the left too. It's hard to pigeonhole everyone, and there can be different of opinions. Like in my life, I've seen such a change between the left and right Stardust, and one of those, couple of ones. One, I'm surprised that the whole war thing. The left
Mhm.
used to be anti-war, now they seem to be rah rah war. Uh, the
Yeah.
left is for like the CIA and FBI. When I
Mhm.
went to college, the colleges wouldn't even allow the FBI or CIA on campus to recruit because the leftists hated it. And then censorship. When I was young, and this is years ago, the left used to say, "Hey, I may not like what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. And hey, if you find something offensive, just turn
Mhm.
the channel, bigot. You don't have to." But
Mhm.
now the left seems to be all about censorship, book burning, taking down videos. We can't talk a lot about stuff on YouTube like COVID
Mhm.
because of the censorship. So these have been like radical changes in the left in my lifetime from what they at least said they supported to what they support now.
I think you might be right. I think that there are I do see the same thing on the right though. I see right-wing and left-wing creators taking down each other's videos. And I see left-wing and right-wing people trying to censor each other and censor people within their own groups. So I think that people have become a little bit too comfy with censorship maybe. I'm not really into that. And I think there are still liberals out there who are anti-censorship and pro freedom of speech, and just like there are conservatives who are still out there who still believe in those things as well.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We have some friends here that are like the old school liberals that aren't, I guess, and I hate to categorize, but the social
Mm,
justice warriors that seem
mhm,
batshit insane to me. And so I think there is a variation on the left. So KMAX, I would say there's definitely some overlap that can happen there and
mm,
does happen. That gets really confusing because it's real funny now. Another thing,
mhm,
liberals used to hate big corporations. Now it's, oh my God, I love big corporations. So it's
mhm.
funny how that's really changed over the
Yeah.
years.
I think I think it really depends, because I think there are a lot of lefties who are very anti big corporation, anti establishment, and you'll find a lot of lefties who are who align with like far right people on that, who are anti establishment, anti big corporation. I think it's just center, like more center people, um, maybe tend to have a little bit more trust in the institutions. Not really sure why.
Yeah. So, and yeah, if you guys have any other questions about men or young men and the whole incel stuff, what do you see the future of America first? Is that just kind of fizzling away, or is that have a future?
I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on with Ye. I think that gave a lot of attention to Nick Fuentes, and it gave a lot of attention to America First, and they were able to probably push out a decent amount of marketing because of that. But I think that given it's Ye, they're going to have to change their messaging if they want that to continue to speak to a larger group of people. Um, so I think I think that so one example is the whole they wanted like generally what America First wanted was generally like a white majority um uh and things like that, like a white culture kind of is um front, essentially. And it seems with Ye being brought into the mix that they're a little bit more lenient on that specific point. So
Yeah,
mhm.
I think there's always been a little bit of confusion there because there used to be the
Yeah,
joke, the Mexican child leader of the white race,
yeah,
Fuentes, and
yeah,
I don't think that's fair, but I think that's why the whole concept of racial categories is actually a little bit confusing. Like, would you call Fuentes Hispanic because of his last name?
mm,
Or or Cruz, Ted Cruz. It's a
yeah.
Hispanic name, but or DeSantis is Italian. But so I think a lot of those categories get a little bit confusing. And do you support the idea of being able to keep a majority culture? For example, keeping Israel majority Jewish. That is our official position in
Mm,
Congress, that we plan to keep Israel majority Jewish, and they enforce that through immigration laws. And this is a thing that always irritates me
yeah.
quite a bit, is groups like the ADL, they support unlimited immigration into traditionally white countries, but they oppose it to their homeland. How do you respond to that?
I don't know that I know enough about Israel to really say, but I think that America has its own unique culture that has come about from hundreds of years of different cultures coming here and mixing together. And like pizza is something that is I know people hate it when I bring up food, but I think food is one of the like the best examples um of how mixing of cultures can really like create new things and create a new culture all on its own. I think American culture is a new culture all on its own, and I think it's pretty special because of that. So as far as immigration, I mean, I guess as we need it, as we need immigration, I see no problem with it. But I wouldn't support Israel not allowing like people to come into their country um for because they're not Jewish or things like that.
Well, I think they will
Yeah.
allow it, but they have their immigration
Yeah.
policy, and it's stated, and it's in a
Uh,
congressional bill. I've showed it many
mhm.
times that we're dedicated to keep Israel majority Jewish, because otherwise you don't have self-determination.
Mm,
It would be like, let's say in your homeland, if a bunch of Germans came in and replaced your people and it's a democracy and they became the majority and they
mm,
changed your policies. I think most people want to have self-determination in their culture, and I think that is a fundamental position. So it's not like a 100% pure or anything like that,
mhm,
but just like Japan should be for the Japanese people, Korea for the Koreans, Israel for the
mm.
Jewish people, or Pakistan for the Pakistanis. Although you're right, it gets complicated, right? Because you have ethnic tensions even in Pakistan between the Hindus and the Muslims and even
Yeah.
the Afghans. So
And
I
even
see that.
throughout history, we've like borrowed from each other's cultures, and nothing is truly originally from one culture. You can look at like the way that we borrowed different musical things from different cultures. We've borrowed different scientific advancements from different cultures, and I think that I just think that America is really unique in that it's kind of its new kind of it's this new group of people that we've created. And and I obviously I think that people who come to America should believe in democracy and believe in liberty and things like that. um but I think what's most important is that people who come to America and integrate with the American culture, and that as long as that happens, that generally we'll have a um pretty good uh how would I say it,
Well, my
core
my
people.
point about
Mhm.
what if they don't want to integrate, though? What if they just want to replace and they want their values? And in a democracy,
Yeah.
if enough of them come in, they just outvote you, and then you no longer have self-determination. So
I think there
using
was a
the
study on
Jewish,
this.
yeah, just like the Jewish example in Israel, if they allowed Muslims to just immigrate freely, it would no longer be a Jewish state. And their
Yeah.
argument would be, well, hey, we want a Jewish state. Not that we hate Muslims, but we want a homeland for our own. We don't want the call to prayer 5 times a day and
Uh-huh.
all that nonsense. We have a different view of things. And I would argue that American culture, just like a lot of other European countries, we did have a culture. This was founded by the English and it was a Christian society, very white. It's 90% white when I was born. So this idea of all different cultures, man, I don't know about that. That's kind of iffy. And if you
Mm.
replace a culture, then you replace the people. Or do you subscribe? See, I don't believe in the magic dirt. Like if you just replace the people with other people just because they're in this location, they're going to act like Americans. I always use the example of like Haiti and Japan. Let's take two non-white populations. If you could
Uh-huh.
magically take all the Haitians and put them in Japan, all the Japanese in Haiti, pretty soon Haiti is going to look like Japan and Japan will look like Haiti because people
Uh-huh.
make the difference and the location doesn't really change the people. Uh,
Sure. But what I would say in response to that is, I think there have been studies done on this where they feared the same thing happening in the UK, but that what the studies showed is that essentially people who come from these Muslim countries who have children, it only takes one or two generations for those children to actually integrate with the culture, and that's in the UK. I think the UK is not even as good at integrating as America is. America is like um, one of the best at integrating foreigners, and I think you can see that with how like U.S. Muslims are so much more aligned with American values than Muslims in other countries.
All right, I got a couple other super chats before we let Stardust go, and thank you, Stardust, so much
Yeah,
for being here.
thank
I
you.
I hope we've been nice to you and not
Of
mean to you.
course, I
That's
really
good.
appreciate it.
You usually, I feel so bad, but a lot of it I think is just for entertainment value. People
Yeah,
are mean to you, so
yeah.
Viking is saying, if Western society is systemically racist, why do so many people of color immigrate to the West? Which nation should we emulate to end racism? China. This is a good question. This is something that
Mm,
always pisses me, right? You always hear, oh, America, white supremacists, the evil people. And then everyone's like, I want to get the fuck in America. And it's like, well, if you
yeah.
hate us white people, why the hell do you come here? And why don't you go back to your homeland and develop a nice society? Why do you
Mm,
always follow us everywhere? And a lot of white people, they just want to be left alone. They want to have their own society,
mm,
and we don't want to bother anyone. You just want to have our own. But people are like, they can't create that because their societies tend to be shit and they want to come to our society. And so you understand the tension there.
Sure. So what I would say is, I don't typically see people who are foreigners who immigrate here complaining about like systemic racism as much as I see people who were born and raised here complaining about systemic racism. But systemic racism doesn't mean that I view like all white people as guilty or all white people as evil or anything like that. If anything, systemic racism is completely separate from people as a whole. And it's just laws that essentially seem to it's laws that essentially seem to affect certain populations more than others. I would never blame like all of white people for that. And I think it's really silly and stupid when I see liberals and lefties kind of trying to blame white people for things that it's essentially like racism, essentially, So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and that's
yeah,
the thing. Another thing that's
yeah,
changed. And when I was younger, the
yeah,
big push started to be, "Oh, we're all humans. There is no such thing as race. If you believe in race, you're ignorant. We all bleed red. Blah blah blah. Don't look at color." And now the left has, maybe not all the left, but they've totally abandoned that. They're all about racial spoils now, and like, oh, if you're white, you can't,
mm,
we're not going to interview you. In fact, someone in the chat, I won't say who he is, he worked for a pharmaceutical
mm,
recruiting. They said if they're white man, just throw their resumes away. So now it's a racial
wow,
spoil system in the United States. So the left has really abandoned this equality, and now they're into this equity, which is kind of a communist concept. Equalities give everyone the same chance, equity have the same outcomes.
yeah.
And so where do you fall on that? Are you more of the old school where everyone is kind of the same, don't look at race, or do you look at it as more of a racial spoil system? I don't know if we can get away from race. I mean, your
Yeah.
homeland, Indian, Pakistan, sure the hell hasn't. And so I don't know if that's really possible.
Um, it's a very good question. So I think that there are definitely far left people who make everything about race, and then there are far left people who refuse to even look at race. And I don't know that either one of those approaches, even when I see like just maybe not even far left, just normal people who are like looking at, they're ones who look at race all the time, and they're ones who refuse to see race. I don't know that either one of those are the solution. I think that um, the cultures that we're raised with obviously have an influence on us. Um, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that the overarching American culture can't apply to all of us. I'm not really about, I'm really more somebody who's equality of opportunity. So I don't need to see equality of outcome. I need to see equality of opportunity. If everybody has the same opportunity to succeed um, and achieve in this country, then I have no problem with it.
All right, good answer.
Mm.
Mr. Throne, hey Stardust, happy Chinese New Year. Do you celebrate the Chinese New Year? I didn't
I
know that.
don't, but I appreciate it. Happy Chinese New Year.
What's your Chinese zodiac sign? Do you even know?
I
I'm the
think I'm the.
rabbit, I think.
Oh, you're the
Yeah.
rabbit. I'm the sheep.
You're sheep. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about anti-Semitism? Is it overused word nowadays? And have you ever bathed in the Ganges? That's a river, right? Am I pronouncing
Yeah.
that right?
Mm-hmm.
The holy
Mm-hmm.
river?
Yeah. So, I don't think anti-Semitism is an overused word. I think in some cases people do use it incorrectly, but I do think anti-Semitism exists. As far as bathing in the Ganges, I've never bathed in the Ganges, so yeah.
Do you think the British colonialism was good for India?
In some ways it
They
was.
eliminated a
Yeah.
lot of your cultural practices that the British thought were barbaric, like what was the practice where the women, they have to be thrown in the fire
Yeah, the
when their
funeral
husband.
pyre.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they limited that.
Yeah, in some ways, yes, but in other ways, it did reduce the wealth of India quite a bit in comparison to other countries. So it really depends. It's a very complicated issue. So
Oh, just for fun, and this is a problem, Stardust.
uh,
Some of us get in this internet culture, and some people don't follow it all. And this guy said, like, my dad wouldn't know what this means. He's asked, "What does incel mean?" and not everyone knows that. That means involuntarily celibate, and it
Mhm.
became this movement of guys that can't get women, and they're it's kind of like a victim thing, meaning they're celibate, but not because of anything they can do. It's involuntarily, and they have a right to sex. That's a human need. Would you say that is their position, Stardust? Am I saying the word right?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think you're right about your assessment of what an incel is. So, yeah.
And it's a new thing because we
Mhm.
never had that term just a few years ago. The internet, we always come up with these new terms. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Stardust. This is a question I was just asking. Does Stardust feel the British caused some of the issues in India and Pakistan? How are the British viewed in that part of the world? Well, it's kind of funny because the prime minister of England's not even English. I think, came from India, right? And so there has been a lot of influence. I know the Brits in like cricket's popular and a lot of British
Mhm.
type stuff. And but yeah, the colonies and when Britain in the 19th century specifically, it was they had some issues where they when they a lot of the sepoys, I think, were the Indian soldiers, and there was a big Indian mutiny. And what was it,
Mhm.
1857?
I think well, um as far as the partition, I do believe it was the British who made the partition between India and Pakistan, and I don't think that that was a particularly good thing. Um, uh, because I think that ended up splitting a lot of families and ended up hurting a lot of people. And there's like a whole history behind it, but it essentially uprooted a lot of people and caused a lot of disaster. And now you've got the two countries that were, the British. Well, there are three, but India and Pakistan now are like at odds with each other all the time. And I think if they hadn't been split, they might not be at odds with each other as much.
Aren't they at odds because of mostly the religious differences? And by the way,
There,
India wasn't like a unified country. It had
yeah.
various rulers that the British would work with.
India's
Uh,
always had a very large amount of different religions in it. There are tons of religions in India. And Pakistan may have been a region where there were more Muslims, but you can still find Hindus in Pakistan. There are still Hindus who live in Pakistan. Um, so
wasn't that the Sikh area? Is that how you pronounce it? Sikh? They're the
Sikh is
guys with
different.
the
Sikh is different from Hindus. Yeah, Sikh is different from
yeah. Aren't
Hindus.
they in the Pakistan region though?
Uh, I
I
think
want to say it's like the Peshwa in that area, or however you pronounce
there
that.
there might be some in Pakistan, but there are Hindus in Pakistan as well. And I think uh I just think if that split hadn't been made, that maybe for the most part, India's got thousands of years of history of different religions living near each other, and it's not always been peaceful. But well, I mean, for actually, there are points in it where it hasn't been peaceful, but for the most part, people have lived next to each other and been okay. So
Yeah, I think one of the problems is because if a lot of the Muslims consider the Hindus to be infidels, that creates an issue, right?
yeah, but see, part of the issue is like another example is Indian Muslims tend to be much more lax and much more uh much more chill, I would say, in comparison to other Muslims in other parts of the world. And I think you can see the spread of Wahhabism, and
Yeah.
that's like a more extreme sect of Islam. And unfortunately, I think Pakistan has a much more extreme sect of Islam that has spread throughout their country.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
Viking is saying, "Hey, Stardust, have you read any Thomas Sowell?"
So I have one of his books, but I don't think I've read any of it yet. So.
He's a black author, and
Mhm.
he was in economics. So if you're a liberal, he may give you a different point of view on
Mhm.
the whole economics thing. So, oh, sorry about that. I
Yeah.
clicked on the wrong thing here. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend reading him if you haven't. And let me just see if I'm caught up on all these questions. It's been a great hour. Oh, okay. It has been said the right believes in hierarchy and the left more equality of sameness. How does this compare to the Indian caste system? This is Rojas. And yeah, Rojas, traditionally the right meant belief in hierarchy, which I believe in. And the left was more about like equality, although they've kind of moved off that. Now they have their own, we're developing our own caste system racially in the United States with all this racial stuff. But yeah, everyone brings up the Indian caste system. Does that still exist?
It still exists, although they've kind of made it illegal. But you can still see it echo throughout India. And it's probably one of the cruelest things that you'll see Indians do to each other. So,
Was that based on the higher castes were lighter skin color? Was that true?
not necessarily true. No, all of the people in the caste system were of Hindu religion, but it depended on which family you were born into. So depending on where what you were born into, it depends on what caste you're in. So.
All right, great. And Starbus, has been wonderful to have you
Thank
on.
you.
And I just want to, how can people follow your work and what are you doing and that type
Sure.
of thing?
I cover politics and sometimes online drama as well.
Yeah.
You can find me. All of my links are at links.fromstardust.net. So you can just go to that website and you can find my YouTube, my Twitch, all of that on there. So yeah.
I'm so happy we finally connected. I
Yeah,
wanted to have
thank
you
you.
on, and you've been a really great guest. And so, thank you for being my first guest in this new
Thank
format. You
you.
did a great job, and I have found I don't know about you, but I prefer to be the guest than do the interviewing because it's
Yeah.
easier to be the guest in some ways. When you interview, you want to make, but you were a perfect guest because
Oh,
some
thank
guests,
you.
you probably know this. Some guests, they just either too quiet, you have to pull everything out of them,
Yeah.
or they're opposite. They start to
Yeah.
ramble. You were right on spot. So good guess. So thank you
Thank
on
you
that.
so much. Thank you for having me. Have a great day. And
All right.
yeah, have a great
See you later.
day. See you
Okay.
later.
All
Bye.
right. And guys, we will continue with the Rumble.
Okay. Chat, what did you think? An even 1 hour interview. Starbus. Starbus. Great talk. Thank you. RamZPaul, always a top class dude. Very nice guy. Very nice guy. You did good. Pretty good. I know that there's some parts there I could have pushed back a little bit more on. But we'll get there. I'm working on it. That was really good. You did awesome. Thank you. I think he's a smart, well-spoken dude. He is, yeah. You're so smart about this shit. I don't know shit about shit about fuck. Seems like in faith in general, a little bit cringe but expected from a boomer. He was nice, but the brain rot was strong. Yes. You never corrected him by saying your homeland is America. Well, I feel like I already explained that I was born in America. I can't really overcorrect on that any more than I already did. So, yeah. He kept calling you Pakistani or Indian. He was just like, whatever. That's fun. I liked it. Well done, Stars. Thank you. What a nice guy. What a nice guy. I disagree with the things that he believes and he says, but he's very polite. So, well, that was my interview with RamZPaul. I know Egghead got annoyed at a certain point. Let me see what Egghead got annoyed at. Egghead got annoyed at like the immigration point, I think. Yeah. This time you were not that agreeable. Thank you. I'm sure somebody is going to look at this and say I was too. Somebody's going to look at this and say I was too agreeable. Let's see. You didn't tell him that white genocide is a choice, and to say otherwise is to erase white people's own agent. What? I don't like how his audience needed you to be the embodiment of all questions India. And throw in these seemingly boomer, ignorant, seemingly naive questions. That's okay. I am fine with it. Push back more soy. Mindwaves is already downloading the VOD so he can go frame by frame and interpret every word in the least terrible way possible. Why don't you push back? Starbust, LOL, oh no, I missed that if true. Ah, my goodness, guys. My goodness. Well, I hope you liked it. What's going on with Steven Crowder versus the Daily Wire? Not sure. I hate the point if you swap everyone in two countries, they'd be the same. That's not how immigration works at all. Yeah, it's generally not. And America's really good at immigrating and integrating people. So it's a very good discussion. I missed most of it though. Steven Crowder, Daily Wire. I liked how his girlfriend had to let you know big tech was too mean. That was nice. 50 mil for propaganda? Stardust. Let's see. Thank you. Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire are publicly beefing about a $50 million contract. Ooh. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. So we'll cover this a little bit later.
All right. Our friend Steven Crowder has launched a new...
Yeah, there's drama here, that's for sure. Almost 10K subs, let's go. True! We're so close. We're so close to 10K. What should I do for 10K subs on YouTube? Any constructive criticism, please let me know. I'm probably going to end... Stars, would you be interested in watching a video I made about British Muslims that involves our friend Sargon? Sure. Clown makeup? I wonder who's funding the 50 million contract. Go mask off and be racist. Okay, real talk. Did I push back enough?
Well, they
What is this? British Muslims are more British than you are. Lotus Eaters call off the genocide. Okay, I'll take a look at this. There was room. You could have gone further, Stardust. For 10K, get on a degen. Mainly the Haitian and Japanese point. Yeah, I could have pushed back there. I could have pushed back there. It was fine. You let him talk. Starbust once again harming us. True. So true. I say no, but I'm biased as I'm always thirsty for blood sports. What is no to what? Oh, no, as in I didn't provide enough pushback? Yeah, I can do more pushback in the future. I think you could have fought more, but you're not that type of personnel. Well, I mean, you know, it was the first interview. I don't want to create too much of a ruckus, right? But I tried to push back where I could. I gotta troll more though. That is something I've stopped doing as much. Trolling. I kind of like how you just ask questions and let people talk. Not everything has to be drama. Do a Mr. Girl? What does that mean? I always love me some Nebraska Sea, but I know it's not super effective, but damn, it's invigorating. I gotta start trolling it more again. Okay, I'm probably gonna log off. I'll be back at 6:30, okay? I'll see you guys, I'll see you guys then, 6:30, okay? I actually hated your panels before. This new content you are doing is way more enjoyable. Later, see you guys in Destiny stream? Why? What's Destiny doing later? Oh, you guys are, you're gonna go over to Destiny's now. Okay, I see. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye. I organize a Bloodsport debate for your 10K celebration. Yes, I can do that. I'll do that. Okay, let me see who I can raid into. Optimization, redirect. Oh, I can't raid into Destiny. He needs to add me to his approved people. All right. I'll see you guys at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, okay?